Shalom. So today, somebody posed a question on Facebook in the Yahad group about as a body of believers, what should our definition of, what should our recognition of marriage be? And in the Hebraic Roots movement, this is kind of a hot topic. Now, I will say this: I saw where the post was made, and I saw where people were commenting on it, but I didn't read any of the comments. I'm going to read them after I post this video, but at this point I'm not going to, because trying to have this discussion about essentially whether someone should get a marriage license or not is like trying to have a discussion with a group of doctors and nurses about the safety of vaccines, because I've done my research. Like when I do something, when I'm going to sign a piece of paper that I don't understand why I have to sign it, or if I'm going to do something that could have negative consequences, I do my research. So when I had my first child, I did a lot of research into vaccines, and I came to the conclusion for myself that vaccines were not in my best interest, because I don't particularly want to have a child with brain damage and autism, that kind of thing. I want my child to be healthy and vibrant and intelligent. So I didn't get my child vaccinated. Now I got his first set of vaccines when he was a baby, but by the time he was up to the second set, no more. We're not, it's not good for him. But if I try to have that discussion with people who their only source of education has been what the TV's told them to think, then it is so frustrating that it just becomes so aggravating, because this person is trying to make an argument from complete and total ignorance, and they think that they're an authority. And it's the same way that I've found with people on Facebook. So like if you're trying to say, what are your thoughts on marriage license, you'll get these zombies who are like, oh, you have to have a marriage license. The state has to. You have to, or it's not recognized. It is not recognized. You have to. Okay, let me tell you something. And what I'm about to say, if you can understand what I'm about to say, then you'll probably enjoy the rest of the video, because you may be an intelligent person who can think, multidimensionally. So I made a video last week about the way religious thinking is one-dimensional thinking. So it's either got to be this or it's got to be that. There can't be another answer. A document has to be 100% true or 100% false. You can't be discerning. You can't use your brain. You just have to accept everything or nothing. Same thing here. People, okay, here's the way people look at it. They look at it like, I see people who have a marriage license and their marriage is recognized and they can get all the bells and whistles that go with a marriage. And then I see these other people who just put their hand on a Bible with them and their girlfriend in a room by themselves and swore that they were married, and just suddenly they said they were married, and then something happened and it worked out badly for them. So therefore, marriage license must be the only legitimate choice, because this other example, this other person did it their way and it worked out badly. The man and woman, the man left, the woman was stuck with no proof that she was married, and the court said there's nothing they can do, something like that. And that's the only, most people, one-dimensional. You got a line, that's one dimension. It's either this or it's that, but it can't be something else. You can't have another answer out there. If you're one of those people, then you're going to hate this video, because I'm going to show you that there's actually other answers. So let's lay a foundation here. First of all, when a state says they do not recognize a marriage, that is not the same as saying the marriage is invalid. Okay, the majority of the public educated people out there cannot even understand what I just said. So I'll say it again. A state saying they don't recognize a marriage is not equal to a state saying a marriage is not valid. Do you understand the difference? So if you ever seen a judge, you ever go before a court and the judge is given a piece of paper by like the defendant or the plaintiff, and he looks at it and he says, I don't see anything here. I don't see anything. And the guy's like, well, there's words on it. What do you mean you don't see anything? He's like, no, I don't see anything. What does that mean? That doesn't mean he can't see these words. The judge is not blind, okay? What he's saying is there's nothing on this piece of paper that he can get jurisdiction over. There's nothing on this piece of paper he can make a judgment about. He has no authority to do anything about anything that's written on this piece of paper. That's what he means. When he says that, when he says I can't see anything, he means there's nothing for me to do. It's like you give a construction worker, you give him a piece of paper, you say, here's the plans for the house, and the construction worker, he looks at the piece of paper, and it's a computer program. And he's like, I don't know what this is. This isn't plans for a house. But maybe if you put that computer program into a computer, it could like render a 3D image of a house. But to a construction worker, there's nothing he can do with that. There's nothing he can do with a bunch of ones and zeros on a piece of paper or whatever, whatever it is. So, I don't recognize your marriage means I can't see what's written on here. It doesn't mean that what's written on here is not valid. It just means that I don't have the jurisdiction to go in there and do anything with it. For a state not to recognize your marriage, that means that they don't have the authority to come in and take your children from you, tell you how to run your life. They don't have that authority. That's what I wanted. I don't want the government in my affairs any more than I absolutely have to. So for me, when I did the research, I came to the conclusion that a marriage license was not for me. However, I did not sit in a closed bedroom with my wife, my soon-to-be wife, and have both of us lay our hand on a Bible and promise each other we're married and then go out and tell everybody we got married. That's not what I did. So if that's your only understanding of not getting a marriage license, is that you're going to sit there with no witnesses, no recording, no signed anything, and you're just going to say you're married, that's not what I'm talking about. Now, probably 80% of the people watching this video will not be able to wrap their mind around that. And I will get comments from people saying, oh, well, you can just go out and say you're married and you're saying it's legitimate. No. If you're one of those people, go ahead and turn off the video. I don't want your comments. If you can't figure out what I just said, I did not get a marriage license. But I did not get married by just saying I'm married. I followed a process. 99.999% of the people that have problems with their non-government issued marriage license marriage, they did it because they did it wrong. They went out and flew by the seat of their pants, and so they just did it wrong. They didn't do it. they were just trying to fake it till they made it. I guess I don't know. So let's go and let's check out a couple of court references here. Here's from an appellate court in California. The name of the court case is Robert versus Roberts. It's at 81 Cal Appellate 2D 871. And it's from the date on it is October 17th, 1947. It says, in all domestic concerns, each state of the Union is deemed an independent sovereignty, and as such, it is its province and its duty to forbid interference by another state as well as by any foreign power with the status of its own citizens, unless at least one of the spouses is a resident therein of good faith. The courts of such sister state or of such foreign power cannot acquire jurisdiction to dissolve the marriage of those who have an established domicile in the state where residence which resents such interference from matters which disturb the social serenity or affect the morals of its inhabitants. And here's the key part. I'm going to jump down a little bit. It says, this state is a party to every marriage contract of its own residents as well as the guardian of their morals. So what does that mean? That means every time you get a marriage license from a state, that state is a party to your marriage. You are entering into a three-party limited general partnership with the state. The state is a partner in your marriage. That's why the state gets to decide whether you get a divorce. Now, the state takes on the role of the husband. And the man and woman, they take on the role of the wife, two wives. Okay, so you're already in a polygamy type of situation with you, the state, and your spouse. And men, you are subjugated to the role of the wife. And of course, the wife has the role of the wife. Why is that important? The scripture says that the man shall give a bill of divorce. If you are married to the state and a spouse, who gives the bill of divorce? Where do you go to get the divorce annulled? Or the divorce proclaimed? You have to go to the state. You have to go to your husband and get the bill of divorcement from your husband, which is the state. Okay, so another one. This is West versus West. It's a court case from 1998. You can look it up on the internet. You can get the information on the court case, but I'm going to read part. This is out of the court commentary. It says, in fact, the entire familial relationship involves the state. When two people decide to get married, they are required to first procure a license from the state. State is capitalized, by the way. Why is state capitalized? Because that's the sovereign. If they have children of this marriage, they are required by the state, capitalized, to submit their children to certain things such as school attendance and vaccinations. Furthermore, if at some time in the future the couple decides the marriage is not working, they must petition the state for a divorce. Marriage is a three-party contract between the man, the woman, and the state. Linneman versus Linneman. You can look that one up. Citing Van Coten versus Van Coten, the state represents the public interest in the institution of marriage. That's another quote from Linneman. The public interest is what allows the state to intervene in certain situations to protect the interest of the members of the family. Okay, what does it mean when it says protect the interest of the members of the family? The state is now a member of your family, so the state can intervene to protect its own interest. The state is like a silent partner in the family who is not active in the everyday running of the family, but becomes active and exercises its power and authority only when necessary to protect some important interest of family life. It is intervening to protect its partnership. Taking all of this into consideration, the question no longer is whether the state has an interest in, or place in disputes such as the one at bar, but it becomes a question of timing and necessity. So, that was all a quote from West versus West, 689, NE 2D, 1215 from 1998. So, these are court cases. They're telling you. Now, what does Yeshua say? Yeshua says, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve Elohim and Mammon. So, on your marriage contract or marriage certificate, if you've ever went and got a state-ordained marriage license, look on your marriage certificate and tell me, does it say the state of whatever, state of Tennessee, state of Alabama, state of New York, in all capital letters? Does it say the state of something, or does it say Yod He Vav He? My bet is that your marriage certificate has the name of the Creator nowhere on it. The only Elohim that's on that marriage certificate is the corporation that runs the state in which you reside. Let's go to another court case, or another piece of information. It's not a court case. This is quoting from a book. The name of the book is Sovereign Christian Marriage. It's on page 46. There's a list of reasons not to get a marriage license. Here's reason number 2. When you marry with a marriage license, you grant the state jurisdiction over your marriage. When you marry with a marriage license, your marriage is a creation of the state. It is a corporation of the state. As a matter of fact, most states treat married spouses as the equivalent of business partners with a fiduciary duty toward each other insofar as property and custody are concerned. Therefore, they have jurisdiction over your marriage, including the fruit of your marriage. What is the fruit of your marriage? Your children and every piece of property you own. There is plenty of case law and American jurisprudence which declares this to be true. In 1993, parents were upset in Wisconsin because a test was being administered to their children in the government schools, which was very invasive of the family privacy. When parents complained, they were shocked by the school bureaucrats who informed them that their children were required to take the test by law and that they would have to take the test because they, the government school, had jurisdiction over the children. When parents asked the bureaucrats what gave them jurisdiction, the bureaucrats responded, your marriage license and their birth certificates. Judicially and in an increasing fashion, practically your state marriage license has far-reaching implications. So that marriage license is your agreement that you're signing to get to give the state jurisdiction over your marriage. So the question of whether to get a marriage license has to do with, are you fit to rule your own household? Because if you actually go into the law, and I'm not going to, but I'm going to tell you, you can look this up yourself. If you go into the law and you look at the only reasons that you're ever required to have a marriage license, it is because you are declaring yourself to be incompetent. So if you look back in the common law, it talks about imbeciles. Imbeciles are required to get a marriage license because they have to get permit. They're not competent to make these important decisions, so they have to go to a guardian. In a guardian-ward relationship, they have to go to a guardian and get permission. Now, the other instance is for interracial marriage. If you're in an interracial marriage, according to the common law, you're supposed to get a marriage license. That's where the precedent was set. Now, ask yourself. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who are in interracial marriages, but if you're not, let's say that you and your wife are of the same race. If you get married to this person and you get a marriage license, the state doesn't tell you this, but legally, what they do is they look at it like this. Well, they're not required to get a marriage license, but they did get a marriage license. They're not an interracial couple, so therefore, they must be legally incompetent. So by the action of you getting that marriage license, you are, in a de facto sense, declaring yourself to be incompetent legally, and you are appointing the government as your guardian over you. So, back in the common law days, around the early 19th and 20th century, if someone was incompetent, they would get a guardian put over them. They would be declared a ward of the state. Now, President Roosevelt, at the opening of the Jamestown Exposition in Norfolk, Virginia, April 26, 1907, he says, as regard to the first set of dangers, it behooves us to remember that men can never escape being governed. Either they must govern themselves or they must submit to being governed by others. If from lawlessness or fickleness, from folly or self-indulgence, they refuse to govern themselves, then most assuredly in the end they will have to be governed from the outside. They can prevent the need of government from without only by showing they possess the power of government from within. A sovereign cannot make excuses for his failures. A sovereign must accept the responsibility for the exercise of power that inheres in him. And where, as it is true in our republic, the people are sovereign, then the people must show a sober understanding and a sane and steadfast purpose if they are to preserve that orderly liberty upon which, as a foundation, every republic must rest. So, what are you doing whenever you are declaring yourself to be incompetent? You are declaring yourself to be in need of a governor from without. You are telling the government itself, I'm not capable of managing my own affairs. I need you to manage them for me. And that, my friend, is why they can drag you in to family court and take your children because you have a marriage license. Hell versus Hinkle, 201 U.S. 43 at 47, 1905. There is a clear distinction in this particular case. Now, this is talking about the difference between a corporation and a private individual, between an individual and a corporation, and that the latter has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therein beyond the protection of his life and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land long antecedent to the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights, upon the rights of the public. So why is it that you see the family courts coming in and getting involved in people's marriages? Because it says right there, he has an unlimited power to contract. And you contract away your rights when you get that marriage license. Let me go to another. Now, some people will say something like this, and I'm sure that somebody in the comments section said something like this on that post on Facebook. Somebody said, well, if you don't get a marriage license, then the state of Tennessee cannot come in and protect the woman. The man is free to leave. There's no one to enforce the contract unless you bow down to the state of Tennessee or the state of Alabama or, the Elohim of this world. Well, wait a minute. Psalm 47:7 says, for Elohim is king of the earth. And Isaiah 33:22 says, for Yahuwah is our judge, Yahuwah is our lawgiver, and Yahuwah is our king. He will save us. And you could also read that as he will protect us. So why is it that we feel, not we, why is it that some people feel, not me, that they need the protection of the state in their marriage instead of the protection of Yahuwah himself? Now, if you're saying that you need the state to enforce a contract, I mean, honestly, do we think Yahuwah's arm is so short that he cannot enforce a contract? Jeremiah 17:5, thus says Yahuwah, cursed is the man who trusts in man, and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from me. For he shall be like a shrub in the desert, and not see when good comes, and shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, a salt land that is not inhabited. So, why are we saying that we need to trust in man? Why are we saying that we need to trust? Why are we saying we need to go to a foreign power, the God of this world, to enforce a contract? Why are we saying we need to manipulate people and put them into a situation where the state has power over them? What does Yeshua say about this? Does he not say that your yea be yea and your nay be nay, and anything else is of the wicked one? Anything else is of the God of this world, the Elohim, whose name is at the top of that marriage license. You're going to a foreign Elohim, in this case the state, in order to get this enforcement. Now, I got another reference here. This is from Clark's Summary of American Law, Chapter 1, Marriage Status or Relationship. And it says, marriage is often referred to as a civil contract, but the emphasis in such reference is not the word contract, but on the word civil, as distinguished from ecclesiastical. Since there is religious freedom in this country, a religious ceremony and rules of ecclesiastical organizations with regard to marriage have no legal significance. Though mutual assent is necessary to enter into the marriage itself is a status or a relationship rather than a contract. The rights and obligations of the parties hereto being affixed by the law instead of the parties themselves. Hence, marriages are not within the provision of the United States Constitution forbidding a state to impair the obligations of contracts. So what it's saying there is that a civil marriage has nothing to do with religion. So if you're going in and you're getting a civil marriage, you're getting a marriage contract, it has nothing to do with holy matrimony. It has to do with the joining of two corporations, you and your wife, in conjunction with the state in this three-party limited general partnership. I got another quote to read here. Here is a holding from the decision of the United States Supreme Court in Meester versus Moore, 96 U.S. 76, 1877. It says, as before remarked, the statutes are held merely directionary, because marriage is a thing of common right. Now, marriage is a thing of common right. It's not a statutory thing. Now, it says that any statutes, anything in statutory law regarding marriage, are held as merely directory. Now, you look up directory in Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, it says a provision in a statute, rule, or procedure, or the like, which is a mere direction or instruction of no obligatory force and involving no invalidating consequence for its disregard, as opposed to an imperative or mandatory provision which must be followed. So what is it saying? This Supreme Court ruling is saying that any statute that limits marriage or says that you must do something for a marriage to be valid is void, is invalid. It is a suggestion. So when you're reading the statutory law of your state and it says that such and such must go get a marriage license from the county clerk, that is directory. That is optional. It is a suggestion. It is not mandatory. It is not mandatory to get a marriage license. And I got one more reference here. All right. Now, for the most part, all marriage laws are relatively the same, state to state, when it comes to marriage license. I mean, some of the wording's different, but for the most part, it's very similar. So here I've got Section 300 from California Family Code. It says, marriage is a personal relation arising out of a civil contract between a man and a woman to which the consent of the parties capable of making the contract is necessary. Consent alone does not constitute marriage. Consent must be followed by the issuance of a license and solemnization as authorized by this division. So, you read that and it sounds like a marriage license is mandatory. However, if you go into Black's Law Dictionary and you look up must, this is from Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 1019, must. This word, like the word shall, is primarily of mandatory effect, but the meaning of the word is not the only one, and it is often used in a merely directory sense, and consequently as a synonym for the word may. Okay, so what is it saying? When you see the word must or shall, you shall go get a marriage license. In a legal code, that does not mean you have to do it. It means the same as may. It even uses the same word, directory, the same word that I just read you the definition of, and it means optional. It is a suggestion. The state strongly suggests that you get a marriage license, and they give you really no other direction. You're left thinking, hey, my only option is to get a marriage license because that's just what people do. I am here to tell you that is not the case, because I did not get a marriage license. So here's what I did. This is how you get a legally lawful marriage between two people in the common law without involving the state. Now, I got this marriage while I was living in Tennessee. Look it up on the internet. You will see that Tennessee is not a common law marriage state. Only licensed civil marriages are valid in Tennessee. That's what all these websites will tell you. I put it to the test. So here's what I did. These are the documents that I filed in my county recorder. So here's what I did. First of all, me and my wife, we got engaged. Went and bought a King James Version family Bible. And it had a marriage certificate in the front of the Bible. But it did not have the Creator's name on it. So we made our own. So what I did was I filed after the marriage, after the ceremony, in front of witnesses. Several hundred people were at our marriage. It was webcast on the internet. Our families who were not able to be there watched it online. I had somebody officiating the marriage, the wedding, but I made it clear in here that the person bringing us together was Yahuwah, was not the person officiating the marriage. And in fact, partially I did that because the person that was officiating the marriage had a state licensed pastor 501c3 deal. And because he was an agent of the state, and yes, when you have a 501c3, you become an agent of the state. But because he was an agent of the state, I didn't use his name on here. Now, you may say, well, that don't make you an agent of the state. Really? Go to a wedding and listen to what the pastor says. At the end of it, he will say something to the effect of, by the power invested in me by the state of Florida, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The person that did my marriage didn't say that. He says, by the power of the man, by the power invested in me by the hand of Yahuwah Elohim, I pronounce you husband and wife. So, I filed a notice and declaration of patriarchal marriage. Notice that it is a notice. It is not a license. Look up the definition of license. License means permission. When you go get a marriage license, you're getting marriage permission in the same way that you get driving permission or hunting permission from your master, the state, the Elohim that's known as the state. So, I did not ask permission. I notified them that a marriage had taken place. I did not ask them to recognize it. All I did was I said, hey, just so you know, there was a marriage. This is when it was. This is what we did. Just so you know. FYI. That's it. There was no permission. So, here is what my notice said. My notice said, come the undersigned parties, having declined the option of a state franchise and the disabilities associated therewith, thereby not entering into or instituting minimal contracts with the state and operating sui juris until such consummation of a marriage contract, and thereafter maintaining the positions commonly known as husband and wife, sui juris and alieni juris, respectively. What does that mean? That means that when we became married, the two became one. She and I now are bound in common law as one person. Which means that if I could potentially go to court in place of my wife and literally be her. Okay, the first purpose of this notice is to establish that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahuwah, the Father, has established the rights of the people's capitalized because we're sovereign, desiring to marry, and that the state, lowercase because it's not sovereign, and that the state may not interfere with the contractual relationships of individuals acting under Yahuwah's Torah, capitalized, and within the purview of the natural law, both capitalized, natural law, capitalized. However, a second purpose is for this declaration to establish that marriage of the parties in a legal contract makes a man and woman husband and wife, and it is also the legal status of being husband and wife, as defined in 35 Amjur, Section 1 et sequitur, and is not found to be a requirement of government that all persons obtain a governmentally generated license to enter into matrimony. The parties to this marriage covenant choose, therefore, to retain all of their Yahuwah-given constitutionally protected rights, include rights is capitalized, by the way, including freedom capitalized, of religion capitalized, and the right capitalized to contract capitalized. Why am I capitalizing it? Because it's higher than the state. The state's not capitalized. In case you don't know, our rights do not come from the Constitution. They do not come from the state. They are protected by the Constitution, but they come from the Creator. The Declaration of Independence, the founding document of this nation, says we hold these rights to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are the rights to property, happiness, whatever. I know. I should have the whole thing memorized, not half of it. But anyway. Okay. Third paragraph. The union of the parties to be married is made in accordance with the patriarchs of their Hebrew faith, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as described in the Torah of Yahuwah, recorded by Moses. This marriage covenant is solely between Yahuwah, David Bradford II, that's me, and Christina Chava, that's my wife. Whatever presumption that any foreign or alien god, including but not limited to a person, municipality, or corporation, has been or will be granted jurisdiction into the affairs of their marriage is hereby unconditionally rebutted. In other words, it ain't your business. Foreign corporation, foreign Elohim. Further, that this union of persons is hereby declared to be under the law common or common law as defined within 35 Amjur, Section 28. Nothing specifically that Section 23 of the same title, license, reflects that the requirement of a license preliminary to marriage is statutory and does not exist at common law. Also, the Supreme Court in Meester v. Moore, 96 U.S. 76, ruled that marriage license laws cannot be enforced, as stated earlier, as the statutes are held merely directory because marriage is a thing of common right. Black's Law Dictionary 6th edition defines directory as a provision in a statute, rule, or procedure, or the like, which is a mere direction or instruction of no obligatory force and involving no invalidating consequence for its disregard, as opposed to an imperative or mandatory provision which must be followed. So, paragraph 8. However, in the interest of public notice, this notice of marriage covenant, this notice of a marriage covenant is now made and filed as a part of this declaration, see Exhibit A, that complies with the provisions of 35 Amjur 208-209, and that the parties submitting this cause of action provide a copy of these documents to be signed and attested by 3 witnesses, see Exhibit B, as defined within 35 Amjur 210 and 211, and celebration of the same without the aforementioned requirement of a government-issued license, and thus is not invalidated as evidenced under 36 Amjur 33. Hebrew tradition does not require an officiant. Therefore, the officiant is not designated on the marriage certificate. Said certificate will be filed with the county recorder upon execution thereof. The following information is now made to establish a record of law which will appear in the newly formed family's Holy Bible, including a fully executed copy of the attached marriage certificate. And then, the heading under that, it says, man and woman announcing their marriage. And I have, husband, family name, address, city and state, and date of birth, location of a solemnization, and I have the location where we were married. I have the names of the witnesses listed. And then I said the parties hereby making this declaration do not waive any of their rights where the state may attempt to compel, state is not capitalized, where the state may attempt to compel the people, which is capitalized, to give up their rights, nor perform under any contract or agreement that they have not entered into knowingly, voluntarily, willingly, and intentionally. This explicit reservation serves notice upon all administrative agencies, federal, state, local, or intergovernmental organizations that 1. We do not and will not accept the liability associated with and compel benefit of any and all commercial agreements. 2. That all alleged benefits that we may have received through this franchise were received with explicit reservation of all rights without prejudice. Num Protonc, this 15th day of December in the year of Messiah 2012, we, David Brink and Christina Land, state that the foregoing is true substance and in fact to the best of my knowledge and belief and is made in good faith, and that this observation could be used as evidence and that I have personal knowledge of the facts contained therein, and we signed it. And so that was our notice. Attached to the notice, Exhibit A, the marriage contract. And basically it's just it's a ketubah on the 21st day of Tishri in the year 5773 from the creation, corresponding to October 6, 2012. And then I go into basically our vows that we said to each other, our agreements, the responsibilities of both parties, and then we signed it, had witnesses to sign it also. And then we have a certificate of marriage. Notice in my certificate of marriage, it says right down, I'm trying to do this. Notice that Yod He Vav He is right there. Certificate of marriage signed by me, my wife, and our witnesses. This is my marriage certificate. When my wife went to update her driver's license and all these other government issued things, this is the marriage license we gave them. They said, present your marriage license. Bam, there you go. That's what we gave them. I submitted this to the county recorder. They took it for 2 months, took our paperwork. For 2 months, their lawyers pored over what I just read to you. And after 2 months, they sent it back to the county recorder and said, it's legitimate. They're right. They have the right. Supreme Court says they have the right. Record it. We got our little certificate acknowledging that they recorded it. Took that, went to all these other little government agencies and got our information updated. So all this stuff, people say, well, if you don't have a marriage license, your wife can't get her name changed in all her official documents. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you that yes, she can. My wife, all of her documents, all of her little licenses and all her, stuff, it all says my last name on it now. They updated it all. And I understand, you may think, well, it's kind of hypocritical to not get a marriage license when you have a Social Security card. Well, here's the deal. I had a Social Security card before I knew better. And I'm not going to get myself in deeper. At some point, I'm going to figure out a way to get out of Social Security. I'm going to figure out a way to get out of all these little government contracts. But in the meantime, I'm not going to heap more contracts on top of them. So I can tell you this, as a pastor, as a minister, I will not marry somebody who has a government-issued marriage license. I will not do it. Won't do it. I've never married anybody. I've never, done a marriage ceremony. But I will never do it if there's a marriage license. Why? Why won't you do it? I'll tell you why I won't do it. Because in order to do a state-issued marriage license ceremony in a civil marriage, you have to be an agent of the state. I have to have a 501c3 if I want to do that marriage. I am not an agent of the state. I don't want to be an agent of the state. I don't want to be an agent of the God of this world. I am not going to go and fulfill his ceremonies by the power invested in me by the state of wherever. I'm not going to do it. Period. Now, some people will say, well, this is all fine and good, but, what if the man decides to leave his wife? How are you going to enforce it? Okay, first of all, I've already kind of addressed that. I do believe that the creator of the universe is fully capable fully capable of enforcing his marriage covenant. Fully capable of it. It may be that that man leaves his wife and he gets hit by a bus crossing the street. I don't know. But I believe the Creator is fully capable of it. But that begs a better question. What in the world was that woman doing marrying a man who doesn't fear his Elohim? Why would you marry a man who doesn't fear his God, that doesn't fear his Creator? Why? Why would you want to marry that guy? That's a better question. I'm not going to go out and marry some woman who doesn't keep the Torah and doesn't believe that the Creator is sovereign. Why'd you marry some guy who's just going to leave you? Did you not figure out whether he was a good, upstanding, Yahuwah-fearing man before you married him? And even if he did, even if you marry somebody and they leave, why is it my duty to enforce that? Because you made a bad decision. You know whose duty it is. There's one earthly person who is authorized to give you a marriage license. That is the father of the bride. So, and everybody's like, oh, I know this one couple where she didn't get a marriage license and then the man left and she has just stuck with these kids and the government couldn't do anything to help her. Okay, what happened to her father? When this bride made her husband go to her father and ask permission, what happened there? Why isn't he enforcing this? Okay, so what happened to the father? What happened to the father of the bride? Didn't he sit down and negotiate with the husband and sign the ketubah and agree to a bride price and set that bride price aside as a dowry for his daughter so that he could, in the case that things didn't work out and she got a divorce from her husband, he would have that bride price set aside to give to her? It's essentially a security deposit. It would be like if you decide to rent out your house to a group of teenagers, because that's usually who's getting married, right? You got a couple of 18, 19-year-old kids wanting to get married, maybe 22, 23, hormones raging. So you're going to give them the keys to your house and rent a house to this group of teenagers with no security deposit? You're going to give your daughter to this guy in marriage with no security deposit for your daughter? Oh, wait. You're telling me that the daughter, the woman who was the victim in this marriage that went awry, who just went into this room with some guy and laid her hand on the Bible and proclaimed them to be married with no paperwork, nothing was filed anywhere, no witnesses, that they just didn't even involve the father? The father of the bride wasn't even, consulted? Now, some people may say, well, there are some women whose, their father, molested them or whatever, and they're estranged from their father. Okay, I understand that, but surely there's a man in her family that can negotiate that deal for her. Someone who doesn't have all their hormones raging just wanting to get married, who could sit down with that husband-to-be and be like, okay, what's your bride price? What you got? What you going to pay? What are you going to give us? What's the security deposit for this daughter of mine? Because this daughter, my daughter or this young lady, she's a virgin. She's never been married. She doesn't have any children. She's attractive, intelligent. We've homeschooled her all her life, so she's very bright and smart. Oh wait. So that woman, it wasn't like that. She wasn't a virgin. I mean, what do people expect? You let your children go out and run around and do whatever they want to. Let your daughter go out and basically make herself into a whore, sleeping with every boyfriend she has. She lived with 5 guys before she finally decided to tie the knot with this one, and you can't figure out why it worked out bad? Seriously? No, I guarantee you that all these, these common law marriages that fell apart, none of this stuff was followed. I'm pretty sure that if you had a good father, if this young lady had a good father and sat down with this husband-to-be and was like, look, here's the deal. You're going to take care of my daughter. You're going to respect my daughter. And I'll tell you what, if you don't, If my little girl comes home to me crying because you mistreated her, me and her brothers are going to show up at your doorstep and we're going to whoop the tar out of you. I think there'd be a whole lot. I think that common law marriage might have worked out a lot better. You know, I mean, how do people used to enforce marriages? Simple. The bride's family enforced the marriage. You mistreat that bride, daddy's coming and looking for you. That's what used to happen. But what happens now? We let the state take care of it. You know what? If this couple, if they're not good, upstanding people and they want to get married and they don't have a good basis in the faith and they're just a couple of typical teenagers that have slept around and have 15 different girlfriends they've lived with and boyfriends and all this other stuff, and they're not rooted in the Bible and they're just horny and wanting to get married, then guess what? Yeah, they probably are better off getting a marriage license. But I'm making this video talking about people in the jihad who hopefully have a scripturally focused type of relationship where they're seeking after the Father and they're trying to live purely. Those people, there's no reason they should have a marriage license. There's no reason they should have to go to a sovereign. Now, if you want to marry some guy who doesn't fear his creator, then don't go whining and crying when he leaves you. You reap what you sow. If you're just going to go marry some woman because she's good looking and whatever, then don't be surprised whenever it doesn't work out well for you. But it's not because you didn't get a marriage license. It's because if all you did was laid your hand on the Bible and made a promise and that was it, guess what? You're not married. That wasn't a common law marriage. That wasn't a marriage at all. That was a seduction ritual is all that was. So what should our policy be on marriage? I would say it shouldn't be anything more than the minister sitting down with the bride's father and the husband-to-be and saying, all right, gentlemen, have we worked out the deal? Let me see your ketubah. Let me see your agreement. What's going to happen if this man doesn't respect your daughter? What are you going to do to him? You and your son's going to go pay him a visit? You're going to go straighten it out? Are you, as a father, going to protect the sanctity of your daughter? Are you going to make sure that her marriage goes well? Are you going to be the enforcer of her marriage if this young man decides he doesn't want to work and he wants to spend all day playing video games and not support his family? If not, if you don't love your daughter enough to do that, then send her to get a marriage license. Let her other father take care of it. Let the God of this world take care of it. You don't need to be messing around with it. But don't blame Yahuwah if you're not going to follow the guidelines set forth in Scripture. You didn't see Rebecca and Isaac live with each other for 5 years before they finally decided to get married. They didn't go with no witnesses and just decide to put their hand on the Bible and go hook up in the tent. No, Abraham sent his servant Eleazar to negotiate with the bride's father. They agreed upon a price. The bride price was paid. There was contracts exchanged. By the way, all contracts are oral. So, and yes, it was recorded. You've got a copy of it. It's called the Torah. It's recorded in the book of Genesis. The whole marriage contract. Everything's recorded. Everything's with witnesses. Then he went into the tent with her, and they became husband and wife. Not before. Guess what? You don't negotiate. You don't negotiate the price of, there's the old saying about you're not going to buy the cow if the milk's for free. Well, guess what? If the man's been getting the milk for 5 years, you're not going to have as good of a negotiating opportunity as you would if you did it the right way. And don't be surprised if you don't get a bride price. But if you want to do it the right way, you get your security deposit. I mean, you do it in everything else, do it in all other aspects of life. And people are like, oh, no, man, that's marriage. We're in love, and we don't talk about business when it comes to love. Well, if you want to be stupid, go ahead. Don't discuss business. If you want to go be stupid about it, then just be stupid about it. Well, I'm just going to rent my house, my brand new mansion out to these teenagers, no security deposit. They'll have cake parties every night. I'm sure everything will work out fine. No, you wouldn't do that for your house. Why would you do it for your daughter? What we need, here's what we need. Here's the solution. We need to have good, upstanding families. We need to have people who are, biblically based, people who study the scriptures. And I know some people are going to say, well, you don't even believe some of the stuff written in the scriptures. Yeah, I don't believe the stuff written in the scriptures against Elohim. I don't believe in the sacrifices. But guess what? You're not going to be going out in the backyard making sacrifices in your marriage. But the principles of Scripture, love, justice, mercy, righteousness, justice, all of that, you need to have that foundation. If you got that foundation, and you truly fear Elohim, and you know your spouse well enough that he truly fears Elohim, and your daddy's negotiated the contract, and he's got you a sizable bride price to put away as your dowry in case of a rainy day, in case something doesn't work out, then you're ready for a marriage. A true marriage. But anything else, this business about putting your hand on the Bible and you're just going to say, okay, well, guess what? We're married now. No, that's not a marriage. That ain't nothing. That's a seduction technique. That's a rental agreement. That's all that is. So anyway, that's my take on it.